Okay, good evening, good afternoon, whatever this is for you, wherever you are. Uh, okay, we're going to be studying Pirkei Avot. Hopefully, we'll be able to keep this up. The benefit of the quarantine and coronavirus, if you could use the term benefit, is that it allows us to study more Torah and do interesting things like this and study Torah over the internet and join people from all over together. So what I'd like to look at is Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot is one of the Masechtot in Mishnayot. It's part of the order of Nezikin, of damages, and it's interestingly placed, but it's available and understandable to a wide audience. And that's because it deals with ethics. In fact, sometimes it's translated instead of chapters of our fathers, which was what Pirkei Avos means, into the ethics of our fathers. And it has a lot of ethical lessons that it teaches over the course of its 5 chapters. Some editions have 6 chapters. It includes what's called Brightot in the 6th, and that's what hopefully we'll be studying over. Who knows? We'll see how long these go for. Tonight's the first night, and I thank everybody for joining. And it would be great if we could keep it going even past the virus. I know I have 2 more days left in my quarantine. Hopefully nobody else is in quarantine, and I hope nobody else is sick. And we should hope that this passes quickly. So let's look at the first Mishnah. If you'd like, it's not necessary. If you'd like, I put in the comments and in the description of this video a source sheet, so you could follow along on the source sheet. But again, if your Hebrew isn't up to par, or if you feel you have trouble accessing the source sheet, that's perfectly okay. The first Mishnah states as follows. Starts, and I'm going to read the Hebrew and then translate. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai, u'masar leYehoshua, veYehoshua's kingdom was kingdom of Nevi'im, and Nevi'im masru la'anshei knesses hagdolah. So Moshe received the Torah at Mount Sinai, at Har Sinai. He gave it to Yehoshua. He passed it to Joshua. Joshua then passed it to the elders. The elders passed it to the prophets, and the prophets passed it to the people that are called the men of the Great Assembly, the Anshei Knesses Hagdolah, who were the people that lived at the time of the Purim story, between the first and second Batei Mikdash, between the first and second temples. The Jews were in exile in Babylonia, and the leaders of the Jewish people then, there was no Sanhedrin, there was no classic great court. There were the Anshei Knesses Hagdolah, the men of the Great Assembly, 120 of them. Famously among them was Mordechai from the Purim story. Heim amru shlosha dvarim, and they said these people, these Anshei Knesses Hagdolah, said 3 things. Now, obviously, they taught 120 of them taught much more than just 3 things. But the idea is that they taught these 3 things frequently. This was something that they stressed, and that when they told all of their students. So that's the idea, that they taught these 3 things. They said, "Have a musuna b'din." You should be very careful, very deliberate in your judgments. V'amidu tamidim harbe. You should have a lot of students. And v'asu siyag Torah. And you should make a fence around the Torah, which means that you should set up laws that ensure that the Torah is not violated. So these are, we'll get into it, but these are the rabbinic laws that the rabbis establish. And the rabbis establish laws either to make sure the Torah is not violated, sort of like a fence around it, to make sure, and also that the Torah laws are enhanced, that they're beautified, that they're made even better. And those are institutionalized legislation laws that the rabbis have passed that we follow today. Okay, so let's look at the Rambam wrote a commentary on the Mishnayot, and in his introduction to the Mishnah, which is almost considered like a work in of itself, the introduction to this Mishnah, to the body of Mishnah, the Rambam wrote as follows. This is source number 2. It's a little lengthy, so we're going to read through it pretty quickly. And he says as follows: Kasher hishlim kol ma shedayanim tzrichim lo hitchil avot. The previous tractates, the previous Masechtot that we had learned, were instructions to judges on civil law, essentially. Civil law, some criminal law, some religious law. So after having told the judges all they had to know. Then the rabbis decided, or Yehuda Nasi, really, who was the author of the Mishnah, decided to start with Pirkei Avot, to teach Pirkei Avot next. And he did so for two reasons. Ha'achas, the first reason he did it was he wanted to establish what we're going to see as Pirkei Avos continues is we're going to see how different each Mishnah opens up with a rabbi saying something, teaching something, and this is what they want to teach. This is what they always taught. And these rabbis' names were the sort of what we call the Shoshal Hadoros. The tradition was passed from leader to leader to leader, and that's how this worked. It worked from this rabbi passed it to this rabbi, as we saw in our Mishnah. Moshe gave it to Yehoshua, and that's important to note that we should know that when a judge is judging something in a Beit Din in a Jewish court, this isn't something that they're coming up with. The rules that they make aren't decided on the spot. They're not random. Rather, what these laws come to do is they come to teach us that this is the tradition. We're building on a tradition from the past. Rabbis built on a precedent, on stare decisis in the Latin, that there's a precedent that comes beforehand, and there's a Masorah. So this Masechta, Pirkei Avos, builds on that Masorah and shows us that the laws that we had just covered for judges actually goes further and goes past from past people. Therefore, current scholars and current judges aren't merely judges and scholars and people that we should respect for their current knowledge, but also recognize that they have this tremendous burden to take what they've gotten all the way back from Moshe and pass it on to the next generation. That's a tremendous burden and tremendous responsibility, and therefore with that responsibility comes the respect of the people. And one of the famous principles that we have is that the judges and the scholars from today's time are just as if they're just as important as the scholars back then. So at Har Sinai, during the time the Jews were in the desert, they would go to Moshe or the judges that Moshe set up, and so our judges are essentially just as important as they were back then, because then they would go to those judges for judgment, and today we go to our judges. And we shouldn't look at our judges and say, they're not as good as the past judges. I used to know real. No, that's the idea, that they are the carriers of the tradition, and therefore they have just as much of a role as the previous judges. Right? And there's all these phrases and sayings inside the Talmud that we find that support this idea that judges are as important today as they were back then. Right? So this is a tremendous lesson for us. We shouldn't look at a judge and say, I'm going to listen to him. He's a nobody. No, that's not what we think. We're not going to follow this guy's law that he put into place. No, that's not how we're supposed to look at things. Really, judgment is for God. Mishpat Elokim here, we said, right? That the pasuk says that the mishpat, justice, is for God. But these are the people that carry out the justice, and therefore we have to listen to them just as much. So that's the first reason why Pirkei Avos comes right after all the laws that we learned for judges in Masechet Sanhedrin and the rest of Nezikin. That's why this comes right afterwards, to teach us, number one, that the judges that we're going to be standing in front of in court cases, those judges they have just as much importance as the judges back in the day. The second reason that Pirkei Avos comes, Siva Hashinis, Ki Lashmino b'Masechta Zu Musar Kol Chacham Min HaChachamim, Kedei Shenilmad Mehem Mibchar HaMidos. V'Dayanim Zekukin Lahem Yoter Mikol Adam, Ki Im Lo Yilmad HaAmon Musar. So it says, because Pirkei Avos deals with improving one's character, and improving one's character is most applicable to a judge. A judge has to be the most refined in their character, and if a judge isn't refined in their character, And who's going to be? כי אם לא ילמד ההמון מוסר אין הדבר מזיק לכלל, ולא היזגל לעצמו בלבד, אך אם לא יהיה עדיין בעל מוסר ומנומס, הרי הוא עובד ומעבד את העם בנזיקה. ולפיכך היזגל באבוס במוסר לדיינים המוסרים בדין. So he says as follows, he says that the judge has to be of the finest of character, because when he makes a mistake, it's not only his mistake. He doesn't just harm himself. If I make a mistake, who am I? I'm hurting Pilichowski. Okay, who cares? But if a judge makes a mistake, then he's really going to not only harm himself, but the plaintiffs in front of him and the community that relies on him. So it says, and a judge, and part of that is in the first lesson, is that a judge has to be very deliberate in his judgment, because if he hurries up and he comes to his judgment, or he tricks, or he does shortcuts, or anything of the like, that's going to be a problem. He has to be very careful to investigate and cross-examine the witnesses. The witnesses weren't cross-examined by lawyers in a beis din; they're cross-examined by the judges themselves. And the Rambam is hinting towards what's going to be coming up in future Mishnah lessons for judges. One of them is that the judge has to be very careful that he's not leading the witness on in his questions. He can't be giving away what he's aiming at. He can't be helping the witness or the plaintiff, the defendant, as he's questioning them. I mean, he can't act as a lawyer. He can't sit there and say, "Oh, you should really say this or say that," or even give a hint as to what the plaintiff should say. And he also has to act in a very refined manner. If he goes out drinking with everybody and he goes out joking around with everybody, then how can he stand up in front of the court the next day and act as if he should judge them? If he's just one of them, he can't do that. So therefore, what we say is he's got to be very careful to always act in a refined manner, and that's what Pirkei Avot comes to do. It comes to teach us how a person should act in a refined manner, how they should refine their character and act in a most perfected manner, and that's the idea of what the judge of Pirkei Avot teaches the judge. At the same time, he also shouldn't separate himself too much. It doesn't seem like he's acting too high. And he has to be very careful that he's not led by his desires all around, because then people are going to sit there and say, look at this guy. He purports to be a judge, and really he's just running around after his desire and after his appetites like everybody else. And also, he can't go after wealth. If he's always chasing after wealth, then people are going to start saying, maybe this guy's on the take, right? So that's why Pirkei Avot. So two reasons the Rambam teaches us why Pirkei Avot is placed in the order of the Mishnah that it is. It's placed after the judges learn the rules of how they should adjudicate cases, but then it's there in order to teach judges two things. Number one, to teach the rest of the people that judges have a role more than just a judge, more than just a scholar. They are the carriers of what we call our Masorah, our tradition, and they are to be looked upon that way. And the second point the Rambam makes is that Pirkei Avot comes here to teach the judge how to act in a refined manner, because the judge has to be more refined than everybody else. So that is that's the Rambam's commentary to open up Pirkei Avot and explain to us why it is that Pirkei Avot is placed where it is. You should know the Rambam also has an introduction to Pirkei Avot itself. This we just read from the introduction to his commentary on the Mishnah as a whole. But he also has a commentary as an introduction to his commentary on Pirkei Avot, which is famous in and of itself, called Shmona Prakim, the 8 chapters, aptly named because it has 8 chapters. And that's a work in of itself that you should definitely take a look at. Okay, but I want to just focus on this idea that the Torah comes along to improve our character, because this is a fundamental idea. In fact, in my humble opinion, one of the most important sentences that the Rambam wrote in his work, the Mishnah Torah. The Rambam says as follows. This is, if you want to look this up, first of all, it's source number 3 here on our source sheets, but it's also from Hilchos Tamura, in the end of Hilchos Tamura. And the Rambam says, "Rov dinei Torah einon el eitzos mirachok migodo ha'eitzel letaken hadeos v'esher kol masim. Chen omer lo kasafti lecha shlishim b'matzos v'deos A lot of us have this mistaken idea, and it's an impression that we get, and it's definitely there's validity to the mistake. But the idea is that the Torah is a book of ritual. On Friday night we light the candles, we recite Kiddush over a cup of wine. On Shabbat morning we go to the synagogue and we pray and we read from the Torah, and we have a big meal and we say Kiddush again. And then Saturday night we recite Havdalah. On Rosh Hashanah we blow the shofar. On Sukkot we sit in the sukkah, and there's all these types of rituals that we have. And many people mistake Judaism as a system of rituals. But the Rambam says, no, don't misunderstand. That's not the true purpose of the Torah. The true purpose of the Torah is to refine our character. That's the idea. We are born, not that we were born as sinners, we're not entering into that idea. We're born with two forces within us. We're born with an intellect, and we're born with a desire. And these are the two forces that we have that constantly we're challenged, and we're not supposed to put away and subjugate our desires. That's not Judaism. We're not an aesthetic people. We're supposed to channel our desires to make sure that we're not managed and run by them, but rather that we channel them into a proper way, in a proper manner that is a refined manner. Our job, our role, our purpose in this world is to use the Torah as a way of refining both our intellect and our ideas, our understanding of God and the universe, and also to act in a proper way, so that I'm not such a pig, and I'm not always chasing after the desires that are in front of me. That's really the goal of the Torah as a whole. And that's really what Judaism is all about. Judaism is about perfection of the intellect and perfection of the of one's character and how one purports and one acts and one behaves. That's the idea of the Torah, and that's really what we should be striving for. That's what the ritual leads us to, and that's what the Rambam says. The majority, Rov Dinei Torah, the majority of the Torah is aimed towards the perfection of our character. That's the idea, and that's where Pirkei Avot comes and plays a role, and that's what the judge needed to know. That's our first idea, the perfection of character, and how Pirkei Avot comes to do that. I hope that was very clear. Okay. So now let's see if we go on and we look and we go on to the fourth source, which is really the second part. It's interesting because it says that Moshe gave the Torah, he passed the Torah that he received at Har Sinai, he passed it on to Yehoshua. Don't get the mistaken impression that this is literally a passing of a Sefer Torah to Yehoshua. That's not the idea. The idea is there were many scholars at the time that Moshe lived, and there were many scholars at the time that Yehoshua lived. That's a true fact. But when Moshe Rabbeinu came along and told the people, listen, there's going to be one person that's going to take over after me, the person that was Yehoshua. Yehoshua was going to be this Baal Masorah, the next person that led our tradition. That was Yehoshua. Now, how did Yehoshua get picked? How was it Yehoshua of all the people? Now, first of all, we have a rule in Judaism. There's the sons of the leader, as long as they act as their father did, in other words, as long as they are as righteous and as wise as their father was, then they get to go ahead and lead. So Yehoshua was not Moshe's son. It was not at all. So how did that happen? So look at this comment. Now it says it's the Parish of Rashi. It says it's Rashi's commentary on Pirkei Avot. It's a lot of debate whether or not this was really Rashi or not. But in any case, it is wisdom. It is passed down, and it's under Rashi's name. So let's see what it says. Rashi says as follows. We're in source number 4 in our source sheets. Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. The Lunda L'Kol Yisrael. And Moshe taught it to all of the Jewish people. Shneimar V'Yichtal Moshe es Shiur Azos B'Yamahu V'Yomda es B'nei Yisrael. Okay. V'lama Nemar U'Masro Yehoshua V'lo Elazar L'Pinchas V'lo Shimon Zkenim V'Stavim V'Nachane. So why does it say that it was given to Yehoshua and it wasn't given to, let's say, Aaron's sons who learned Torah with Moshe, his nephews, or it wasn't given to one of the Zkenim or the Nevi'im that lived at the time? Why was it all these people? It was Yehoshua. It says, "Shelo ratzah l'masra l'misha hu memis atzmo minorav b'alei hachma v'kana shem tov ba'olam." So he says he only wanted the Torah to be given. Listen to this: to somebody who killed themselves over the Torah from their youth inside the tents of chachma, and they had a good name associated with them in the world. Right? So what is that? How do we see that? He says, Shnemar Yehoshua benu nar lo yamish mitoch ha'ohel. It says the Yehoshua was a youth, a nar, like a teenager who never left the tent. And even though it says, it praises Pinchas and it says that the Torah was always in his mouth, still Yehoshua was picked. So hold on a second. What's this all about? What did Yehoshua do that he deserved to have the Torah? It was because he killed himself over it when he was young. What does that mean? He killed himself. Torah is a subject to study. There's a lot of books to study when it comes to studying the Torah. And there are two types of people that study the Torah. You have people that I put my hours in, clock out. I learned a couple hours. I'm in, I'm out, I'm done. That's one way of studying Torah, and you'll pick up a lot of Torah knowledge that way. And if you're consistent with it and you're dedicated and you have committed to your hours of learning, you will pick up many, many, many bits of knowledge, and you'll be able to teach, and you'll be a wise person. But if you want to master the Torah, if you really want to be one of these Baalei Masorah, one of these people that have the tradition, and you want to be a leader of the generation, and you want to be a scholar that far surpasses all that have come around them, then you have to kill yourself over the Torah. You've got to stay up late at night, and you've got to get up early in the morning, and you have to be the last one out of the tent, and you got to be the first one in the base medrash. That's the idea. That's what it's required for true mastery of the Torah. It's not enough just to study a few hours. It's not enough just to study a few years. It has to be a lifelong pursuit where you're always studying the Torah. That's what it means. And so Yehoshua, there were many people qualified to be leaders at that time. There were many people that were wise. Many people that were wise. Many people that probably could have qualified as great judges, as great scholars, as people that could teach the Torah. But of all the people that killed themselves in the Torah, that really showed the true effort, that was only Yehoshua. Okay, it says that there's other midrashim that talk about how Yehoshua was the first one in the Beit Midrash. Then was a tent, and the last one out of the tent, and Yehoshua was always there. And that's why when Moshe turns to God and he says to God, he says, "Which one of my sons is going to take over?" God says to Moshe, "It's not going to be one of your sons. It's going to be Yehoshua." Okay, so that's how we see. That's how Torah leaders. And today you should know that today's Torah scholars, the people that you see that are the real scholars, the leaders of the generation, you'll always see they have a book with them, they have a sefer with them, they're always learning, they're always talking and learning, they don't talk about anything else. And the reason is because they're killing themselves over their Torah learning. They're always studying, and that's how they rise to prominence in scholarship. Now, they're not looking to rise to prominence. They're not looking to be greater than anybody else. But what they are looking to do, and what they are trying to accomplish, is this idea of being one that far surpasses what normal effort requires and becomes this great scholar. Okay, let's look at the third part. Yeah, the third section of our notes. This is in source number 5, and here we get to the first lesson in Anshe Kesses Hagdolah. The first lesson that the Anshe Kesses Hagdolah taught in our Mishnah is have a Mesuna Badin. You should be very deliberate in judgment. Okay, so what does that mean, deliberate in judgment? It means that when you hear a case, it's just like the last case we heard. I've heard 15 of these cases. These cases are simple, and a judge can easily dismiss and say, we know exactly what's going to happen, and I don't have to listen so carefully. And even if I do listen carefully, the judge can say, I don't really have to think about it so much. The answer is going to be pretty easy for me to know. This is simple. I'll come back with an answer, my judgment, in 15 minutes I'll be back. So no, you got to take your time. You got to think it through over and over and over again, right? So I just saw something fascinating in a sefer I was looking at either today or yesterday. It talks about the Reb Chaim Soloveitchik met the Chafetz Chaim once and said to him, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik wasn't a posek. He wasn't somebody that decided halacha. He taught how to analyze. He taught Lomdus how to analyze halacha. The Chafetz Chaim was a posek. He was a decider. Now, he wrote a book of decisions of halacha. He wrote a couple of books of decisions of halacha. So the Reb Chaim said to him, says, how do you, I see in some of your writings, you decide between Rishonim, between great scholars. How do you decide who's right? The Rambam, the Ramban, Rashi. How do you decide who's right? How can you come to that decision? How do you know? He says, I look through a sugya, I can't figure it out. It's too much for me to decide this one's right, this one's wrong. So Chavetz Chaim says, in every single time where where there's a debate between two greats and I have to decide, so I learn, I study the subject 36 times until I understand it. That's how the Mishna did. That's sitting and being delivered in judgment. So says the Rambam here in source number 5, in his commentary to this Mishnah, he says, you should take your time, push off deciding the judgment, and don't decide quickly. Until you really understand it. Because there's sometimes things come out and you're able to realize things that don't hit you right away. I'll never forget, I learned from Reb Chaim Milson. I asked Reb Chaim Milson once if you are studying a particularly challenging saying of the Rambam or writing of the Rambam, how does he come to figure it out? So he said that his trick is he just reads it over and over and over and over, and it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because what happens is that as your mind starts to contemplate and rolls the ideas over and over, so you're able to see things you didn't see at first. At first, you came into it and you were very confident in your approach, and you understood very clearly, very easily what was happening. Then you start to think it through, and you realize, okay, there's more here that meets the eye. So you're able to see things you didn't see the first time. That's what the Rambam is saying here. That at first you came to a decision, but if you start thinking about it, the judge will be able to see things. Okay, and that's not only limited to judging a case. That's, as we said, that enters Torah study. As you look, the Rambam says here in source number 6, a person every day should split his time of learning into 3 parts. Shlish b'Torah shebechtav, 1/3 in the written Torah, 1/3 in Torah Sheba'al Peh, and 1/3 into understanding one thing from another, and being able, and really what we're talking about is learning things in depth, and being able to can make connections from one part of the Torah to the other part of the Torah. That's the idea. So and that's really what we spend most of our time studying Torah on, is really contemplating ideas and thinking about ideas. A lot of times we have the mistaken impression that Torah learning is either covering ground or memorizing information. Neither of them are true. That's not the idea at all. The idea is to understand the Torah. Some people can understand things very quickly. Others, like myself, require a lot of time until we understand something. So, and that's the idea. That's really how the Mishna Madin means, that we should take our time. We should take our time until we understand something. So that's our first shiur on Pirkei Avot. This was wonderful. I enjoyed myself. So even if nobody was watching, but I see some people were watching, this was worth it for me to be able to teach this. And I hope that you enjoyed it. And I hope that we can continue this well past Meretz Hashem. Hopefully the corona will end very fast, much faster than we think it will. And hopefully, so tomorrow we'll continue anyway, in the hopes that there won't be any emergencies. But if you're home and if you're in the mood to study Torah, either at 9 o'clock at night here in Israel, or at 3 p.m. in New York time, or 12 o'clock in Pacific Coast time, and any time in between, wherever you might be, I hope that you'll join me, because this is a great time that we can learn together and understand things. And thank you for joining. Have a great night. Shalom to all.